Hey there, fellow art lovers and fans of all things painted. Welcome back to my regular viewers, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Cal, and it's great to have you here. It's the 28th day of Spooky Month, and today's theme is In the Maze. This one was deceptively difficult for reasons I'll get into later on, but I had a rough idea. A view down a corridor of leaves to the treasure in the center of the maze, protected by vicious carnivorous plants. I'm not sure I'd want to run the gauntlet to get it. Anyone here up for the challenge? I started by using the symmetry tool to sketch in the path in the maze we're looking down, complete with towering walls of foliage. I turn it off briefly to add some asymmetrical details and then on again to sketch the stand at the far end holding the treasure. Lastly, I added in a mess of roots across the path to impede anyone wishing to swipe the treasure, and the main challenge, some carnivorous plants. Think Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors. Then it was time to add colour, using a foliage brush to quickly paint in the leafy walls and the wall behind the treasure. I gave them a bit of texture before moving on to block in the sky and the ground. Upon starting to add shading, I felt the corridor wasn't long enough and didn't present enough of a challenge. So I made some tweaks to lengthen the corridor and shrink the treasure at the far end. I added some more texture to the leaves and to the ground using a scattered brush, but little did I know I was only laying the groundwork for something I'd have to correct later on. I coloured in the roots and carnivorous plants, shading as I went, and encountered my first problem. Trying to get them looking like they were growing out of the hedges and not just painted over them. I painted in the flowers of these plants, and actually ended up quite happy with the one in the foreground once I shaded it, but the other ones, less so. No matter how I shaded them, they just looked too messy around the edges. I gave up on them for now and shaded the roots, which to an extent suffered the same problem, but less so. I also painted in the treasure on its plinth. This bit I was fine with. After adding shadows to the roots on the floor which solved their issues, I made my next mistake, adding way too much fog. Do not try to hide your mistakes in fog, it does not always work. But I kept trying, and it kept not working. I also added more detail to the roots and shading to the hedges. I also added some saliva to the foreground plant. But how to fix the rest? Simple. Scrap all that mist and get rid of the plants for good measure and just redo it. The main problem here was a lack of real texture on the hedges and the ground. To fix this, I went back in with the foliage brush and tinkered with the color dynamic settings to have them vary in brightness and adjust the brightness so it was darker closer to the foreground and paler towards the back. For the ground, I used my sand brush to add texture and painted in some rocks nearer the foreground. I also added some moss and leaves around the roots to make them less stark against the ground, as it made the ground look way too bare. Then I went in and redid the carnivorous plants using a softer brush and built up the lighting and shading on them, and added some leaves where they sprung out from the hedge. Some more hedge tweaks, and finally I added some mist, but far more sparingly this time around, and just at ground level. Much better. And we're done. Although this one started out as a bit of a headache, I think I'm still glad of it for the experience. In art, you never stop learning and you never stop being challenged by difficult pieces, but it's all worth it in the end. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed what you just watched, please be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell to see more content. If you want to support my art, you can find a link to my Ko-fi in the description. And if you want to get straight into some more art, you can go and watch this video for my latest content. Or this one for something random.